Have you ever stood on the edge of a decision that the whole world told you was right, but your spirit was quietly screaming that it was wrong? Have you ever prayed for love, but felt like the answer to your prayer was slowly becoming a prison? It began on a Sunday that looked like a scene from a movie. Jedadiah, a man admired by everyone in their community for his charm and his public devotion, was on one knee. The crowd around them was cheering, chanting for an answer. Her mother was weeping tears of joy, convinced that her daughter had finally won the lottery of love. But in the middle of that noise, Cecilia felt a cold knot tighten in her stomach. As she looked down at him, a quiet, nagging voice in her spirit said, "Wait." It was a warning she wasn't brave enough to heed. Under the crushing weight of expectation and the fear of embarrassing him, she buried that voice. She forced a smile, nodded her head, and accepted the ring. To the world, it was a fairy tale beginning. But as the diamond slid onto her finger, Cecilia didn't feel like a bride. She felt like she had just signed a contract she hadn't bothered to read. And the fine print was about to cost her everything. The Bible warns that we will know them by their fruit. But sometimes the fruit looks polished and sweet until you take that first bite and taste the rot inside. 3 weeks into the engagement, the mask began to crack. It happened over something trivial, a spilled glass of water by a nervous server at a restaurant. In an instant, the gentle, soft-spoken man Cecilia thought she knew vanished. In his place was a man of cold, sharp arrogance. He didn't just complain, he humiliated the young server, his voice dripping with venom and entitlement. When Cecilia gently tried to calm him, the rage turned on her. He didn't speak to her as a partner. He silenced her like a subordinate. He made it clear that in his world, a woman's role was to be seen, not heard. The red flags began to multiply. He didn't support her dreams. He belittled them disguised as realism. When she spoke of starting a charity foundation, he laughed it off, telling her that her ambition was too big for the domestic life he had planned for her. He checked her phone. He questioned her friendships. He slowly began to isolate her, building a wall around her life where he was the only gatekeeper. Yet on Sunday mornings, he was back on the altar, hands raised, looking like a saint. Cecilia was trapped in a psychological war zone, engaged to a public angel who was becoming a private tyrant. The breaking point arrived on Jedadiah's birthday. Cecilia had poured everything she had into making it special, hoping that her sacrificial love would bring back the man she fell for. She cooked, she decorated, she waited. She wanted to prove her devotion. But when Jedadiah arrived, he didn't bring gratitude. He brought suspicion. Earlier that day, he had seen an innocent professional message on her phone from a male colleague to a man driven by insecurity and control. Innocence looked like betrayal. He ignored the cake. He ignored her effort. He unleashed a storm of accusations, twisting her desire for career growth into an act of rebellion. He accused her of being too independent, of needing to learn submission before the wedding day. In a fit of temper, he swept the dinner she had prepared off the table. The sound of shattering plates was loud, but the shattering of her illusion was louder. As she bent to clean the mess, weeping, he grabbed her wrist to stop her from leaving. The grip was too tight. It was a grip of ownership, not affection. In that terrifying moment, staring into eyes devoid of empathy, Cecilia finally admitted the truth to herself. This wasn't love. This was captivity. she pulled away and fled into the night. That night, exhausted and broken, Cecilia didn't call a friend. She collapsed in her room and cried out to God for clarity. And in the silence of sleep, God answered with a dream that would change her destiny. She found herself standing not in a church, but in a vast, ancient courtroom. The atmosphere hummed with power and absolute truth. Before her sat the righteous judge, a presence of blinding light. Beside her stood the spiritual form of Jedadiah, but he was stripped of his handsome suit. Here, he was revealed as a small man surrounded by dark shadows of insecurity and pride. The judge did not speak with words, but with revelations that downloaded directly into her spirit. He showed her a screen of her life. She watched scenes of her relationship play back, but this time, she saw the spiritual chains she had been accepting. She saw how every time she shrunk herself to fit his ego, a part of her destiny died. She saw a future 5 years down the road, a gray, lifeless version of herself, sitting in a dark house, silent, prayerless, and completely broken. The revelation was horrific. She realized that by saying yes to him, she was saying no to God's purpose for her life. Then the judge revealed the verdict, a list of truths that struck her heart like lightning. She learned that a wedding is just a day, but marriage is a lifetime. She learned that if you have to lose yourself to keep a man, the price is too high. She learned that God never sends a partner to compete with your destiny, but to complete it. The judge's message was clear. Choose. You can have the ring, or you can have my peace, but you cannot have both. Cecilia woke up gasping, tears streaming down her face, but her heart was lighter than it had been in months. The confusion had evaporated in the light of divine truth. When Jedadiah arrived later that morning, carrying flowers and wearing a practiced mask of apology, he found a different woman waiting for him. The fearful girl who walked on eggshells was gone. In her place stood a woman who had seen the truth. He tried to smooth things over, blaming his temper on stress, promising it wouldn't happen again. In the past, his words would have worked. But this time, Cecilia saw right through him. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't argue. She simply reached into her pocket, pulled out the diamond ring, and placed it in his hand. She told him that she was choosing her peace over his pressure. She told him that she'd rather be single and whole than married and broken. He tried to beg, then he tried to bully, reminding her of the shame of a canceled wedding, but his words held no power anymore. She closed the door on him, and as his footsteps faded away, she didn't feel loss. She felt the exhilarating rush of freedom. Walking away was the hardest thing Cecilia ever did, but it was also the decision that saved her life. She faced the gossip and the rumors, but she kept her peace. Years later, she would meet a man who loved her not for who he could mold her into, but for who she truly was. A man who didn't demand submission, but inspired trust. If you are listening to this story, and your heart is heavy, if you are holding on to a relationship that hurts you just because you are afraid of starting over, take this as your sign. God is not the author of confusion. He is the Prince of Peace. Don't trade your destiny for a ring. Have the courage to walk away so that God can bring you the person who is truly assigned to your life. If you choose peace today, let us know in the comments. And for more stories that reveal the hidden truths of the spiritual walk, make sure you subscribe. Until next time, guard your heart.